1958, just before midnight. Big Sam's hands trembled as he stood inside Lennox Lounge. In his pocket was an object that felt heavier than it should have, not because of its weight, but because of what it represented. $50,000. That was what the 5 crime families had promised for one thing: the end of Bumpy Johnson. Sam had been Bumpy's personal protector for 5 years. More than that, he was trusted like family. Bumpy called him a brother, and now Sam had agreed to betray that trust. The plan was meant to be quick and quiet. Walk in, wait for the right moment, do what was agreed, leave without a trace. Bumpy was seated at his usual table. His back was turned. For a moment, everything lined up just as planned. Sam raised his hand. Nothing happened. The sound that followed wasn't loud, but the silence afterward felt endless. People stopped talking, music faded, even the air seemed to freeze. Bumpy slowly turned around and looked directly at Sam, calm, steady, almost knowing. Then he spoke softly. "I've been counting on you." What no one in the room understood, and what history never recorded, was that Bumpy Johnson had known about the betrayal for 3 weeks, and what he did during that time didn't just protect him, it reshaped how power worked in Harlem. To understand that night, you need to understand who Bumpy Johnson was in 1958. He wasn't just another street boss. To many people in Harlem, he was a shield, a man who stood between his community and those who wanted to drain it dry. By the late 1950s, Harlem was under constant pressure. The Italian crime families wanted control of the numbers game, a betting system built on small wagers that together created massive profits. They wanted it all. But one man stood in their way: Bumpy Johnson. What made Bumpy different was simple. He didn't rely only on fear. He relied on loyalty and respect. When families couldn't make rent, he stepped in. When local businesses were pushed around, he made sure it stopped. When outsiders tried to force their way in, Bumpy pushed back, hard. The families tried everything. Force didn't work. Negotiation failed. Political influence went nowhere. By 1958, frustration turned to urgency. A meeting was called. Every major family sent a representative. The topic was the same: the Bumpy Johnson problem. One voice finally cut through the room. If they couldn't reach him directly, they would reach someone close. That's when Big Sam's name came up. Sam Foster had been by Bumpy's side since 1953, a large, imposing man with a reputation for loyalty. He had stood with Bumpy through loss, pressure, and constant danger. If anyone could get close enough, it was Sam. So they sent a man who specialized in persuasion. 3 weeks earlier, on August 20th, Sam was leaving his building when a black Cadillac stopped beside him. Inside sat a well-dressed man who spoke calmly and smiled easily. He offered him a conversation and a solution. Sam had every reason to walk away, but curiosity, mixed with exhaustion, pulled him inside. The pitch was simple: money. Not for luxury, but for survival. Sam's youngest daughter had been ill for months. Medical bills were piling up. Bumpy had helped, but not enough, and the man in the Cadillac knew it. He showed Sam the money, enough to cover treatment, enough to move his family somewhere safe, enough to start over. All it required was one decision. If Sam refused, the message was clear: life would only get harder. Sam left the car without a word, but the offer followed him home. That night, sleep never came. All he could see was his daughter's face and the briefcase full of cash. 3 days later, Sam called the number. He agreed. What Sam didn't know was that Bumpy Johnson had already. Bumpy never ruled by blind trust. He ruled by understanding people.
He knew everyone had pressure points, and he made sure he knew where they were. His network wasn't made of powerful men. It was made of overlooked ones. Drivers, attendants, workers no one paid attention to. One of them noticed the Cadillac. The license plate was written down. 2 hours later, that information was sitting on Bumpy's desk. Bumpy thanked him quietly and sent him away. Then he sat alone for a long time. 5 years of loyalty, shared battles, shared grief, and now, truth. By the time Sam walked into Lennox Lounge that night, the outcome was already decided, just not in the way anyone expected.
By that point, the pressure on Sam had already begun. The Italian families were whispering in his ear, filling his head with promises and threats. And Bumpy understood something very clearly about men pushed into corners. Desperate men make terrible decisions. Bumpy could have ended the problem immediately. One quiet order and Sam would be gone forever. Many men in Bumpy's position would have done exactly that. Remove the danger, forget it ever existed. But Bumpy Johnson was not like most men. Instead of acting quickly, he watched. Over the next 3 weeks, Bumpy paid close attention to Sam. He noticed the small things, the way Sam's hands sometimes trembled, the way his eyes carried constant worry. This wasn't a traitor driven by greed. This was a man drowning in fear, torn between loyalty and survival. So Bumpy made a different choice. He decided not to punish Sam. He decided to teach him. Bumpy reached out to an old contact in Brooklyn, a skilled gunsmith who had quietly helped him for over a decade. When they met, Bumpy gave him a strange request. "I need a weapon that looks real, feels real, but does nothing." The gunsmith hesitated. "You want it broken?" "No," Bumpy replied. "I want it perfect, just harmless." Within a few days, the man delivered exactly that. A weapon identical in appearance and weight to the one Sam carried every day, but incapable of doing anything more than making a hollow sound. The next step required patience. Bumpy needed to switch the weapons without Sam ever knowing. That meant access to Sam's home while he was away. So Bumpy arranged an errand across the city, urgent, time-consuming, and impossible to rush. While Sam was gone, Bumpy and a trusted associate entered the apartment. They already knew where to look. The weapon was exactly where Bumpy expected it to be. The exchange was quick, silent, perfect. Now came the hardest part, waiting. Bumpy knew that confronting Sam early would solve nothing. Sam could deny everything. The Italians would simply find someone else. The threat would never end. No, Sam had to act. He had to reveal himself. And when he did, the truth would be exposed, not in private, but in front of everyone who mattered. September 12th, 1958. Late evening. Lennox Lounge was overflowing. Nearly 300 people filled the space. Musicians, business owners, community leaders, politicians. Conversations flowed alongside music and drinks, shaping the future of the neighborhood in quiet corners. Bumpy sat at his usual table, dressed sharply, speaking with city officials about housing plans in Sugar Hill. His hat rested beside an untouched drink. Calm, focused, unbothered. Sam arrived earlier that night. He had steadied his nerves just enough to function. In his jacket pocket was the weapon he had trusted for years, the one he believed would secure his family's future. He waited. At exactly 11:47, Sam moved. No one noticed at first. His presence near Bumpy was normal, expected. Step by step, he closed the distance. A few people sensed something was wrong, but it was already too late. Sam raised his hand and pulled. The sound that followed was small, empty, and unmistakable. Silence swallowed the room. Music stopped mid-note. Conversations froze. Every eye turned toward the man standing behind Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy did not jump. He did not panic.
He slowly lifted his glass, took a measured sip, and set it down. Then he turned. The look he gave Sam carried no anger, only disappointment. "I've been counting on you," Bumpy said quietly. In that moment, Sam understood everything. Bumpy had known from the beginning, the money, the offer, the plan, and instead of stopping it, Bumpy had allowed Sam to walk into this room and expose himself in front of his entire community. Sam collapsed. His strength disappeared. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Bumpy interrupted gently. "I know about your daughter." The room remained silent as Bumpy continued. "I've known for months. You think I don't look after my people?" He placed an envelope on the table. Every medical bill had already been paid. Inside was additional money, support Sam never thought he'd receive. Sam could barely speak. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to know," Bumpy said calmly. "I needed to see what choice you would make." Bumpy stood. Though not a tall man, he commanded the room without effort. "You're leaving tonight," he said. "You'll take your family and start over somewhere else. But if I ever see you again, there will be no mercy." Sam nodded through tears. "One more thing," Bumpy added. "When they ask what happened here, you tell them the truth. You tell them I knew. You tell them loyalty can't be bought. And you tell them not to try this again." Sam walked out of the lounge and disappeared from Harlem forever. After he was gone, Bumpy faced the crowd. Everyone was watching. "What you saw tonight," Bumpy said, "was a message. They think we can be divided, bought, broken." He lifted his glass. "They're wrong. Harlem isn't for sale."
It never was for sale, and it never would be. Anyone who believed they could walk into Harlem and buy its people learned a hard truth that night. The community didn't need outsiders to protect it. Outsiders were the ones who needed to be careful. Bumpy lifted his glass. "To Harlem," he said, "and to loyalty that money can't touch." Every glass in the room rose with his. "To Harlem." The band picked up where it had left off. Music filled the air again. Conversations restarted. Laughter returned. Within minutes, the lounge looked exactly as it had before. But nothing was the same. What happened that night spread through the criminal world faster than anyone expected. By sunrise, people from Boston to Baltimore were talking about it. The story traveled fast and grew stronger with every retelling. Bumpy Johnson had known about the betrayal for weeks. He had allowed it to unfold. He had exposed a traitor in front of hundreds of witnesses, and he had done it without violence. The next day, the 5 families gathered in an emergency meeting. Frank Costello was furious, not at Bumpy, but at the failure. He blamed the man who had handled the plan, calling it a disaster from start to finish. But Carlo Gambino saw something deeper. "We can't win against this man," he said quietly. "We've tried pressure. We've tried money. We've tried turning his own people. None of it worked." Costello slammed his hand on the table. "So what do you suggest?" Gambino took his time before answering. "We walk away." The room fell silent. Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, fine, but Harlem stays his. Every move we make against him costs more than it gains. It was the first time the families had ever retreated from a territory without a fight, but they understood the truth. This wasn't about strength, it was about foresight. Bumpy Johnson had proven that night that he wasn't just a street leader. He was a thinker, a planner, someone who saw the board before the game even started. You don't challenge someone like that unless you're prepared to lose. In Harlem, the story of Big Sam became legend. Parents told it to their children. Old men repeated it on street corners. It became more than history. It became a lesson. Loyalty matters. Patience matters. Knowing what's coming matters most of all. The word traveled fast, and when Carlo Gambino later said, "We leave Harlem alone," people understood why.
Bumpy Johnson lived another decade after that night. When he passed in 1968, it wasn't from conflict, it was from natural causes. And fittingly, it happened in the same place where he had delivered his greatest lesson, Lenox Lounge. What Bumpy proved that night is something many people overlook. The most powerful weapon isn't force, it's awareness. It's seeing the move before it's made, turning someone else's plan into your advantage, playing the long game while others rush the short one. Big Sam took the money and left the city with his reputation behind him. Bumpy returned to his table, finished his drink, and continued doing what he had always done, protecting Harlem. If this story caught your attention, take a moment to show your support. And if you're enjoying these stories, there's more coming. Drop a comment and share your thoughts. Could this have ended differently? Would you have made the same choice? And stay tuned, because next we're telling the story of how Bumpy Johnson walked into Luciano Levenval's office with nothing but confidence and walked out with a deal no one thought possible. In Harlem, respect was never handed out. It was earned. And Bumpy Johnson earned every bit of it. What made that night unforgettable wasn't just what Bumpy did, it was what he chose not to do. He didn't seek revenge. He didn't turn Harlem into a battlefield. Instead, he turned a threat into a warning that echoed far beyond one room. From that moment on, the balance shifted. People understood that dealing with Bumpy Johnson meant dealing with someone who listened more than he spoke, who watched more than he acted. His strength wasn't loud. It was patient, quiet, calculated. Men who once believed money could solve every problem began to hesitate. They stopped assuming loyalty had a price. And for the first time in a long time, Harlem wasn't reacting to pressure. It was setting the terms. Years later, when people talked about power in New York, they didn't talk about numbers or weapons. They talked about that night. About how one man let an enemy think they were winning, only to show them they never had a chance. Bumpy Johnson didn't just protect a neighborhood, he protected an idea. That respect is built, not bought. That fear fades, but reputation lasts. And that the smartest move isn't always the fastest one. In the end, Bumpy didn't need to chase control. Control came to him. And long after the music stopped and the glasses were cleared, the lesson remained. Real power doesn't announce itself. It waits.